Hello and welcome. I'm Laura Schwartz, and as we all celebrate the 10th birthday of Executive Secretary and relaunch into executive support, I'm thrilled to welcome you to a behind-the-scenes conversation with none other than Lucy Brazier herself. She's the founder and a publisher of Executive Support magazine and the global authority on the administrative profession. For 10 years, Lucy Brazier's passion for the assistant role to be truly recognized as a career and not just a job has taken her to all four corners of the world and into the training rooms of some of the most powerful businesses on the planet. With access to the most forward-thinking, passionate, and knowledgeable trainers and administrative business leaders in the world, as well as personally meeting and speaking to literally thousands of assistants over the last 10 years, Lucy's knowledge of the market and of what assistants all over the world are facing on a day-to-day basis are second to none. And I am proud to also call her a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lucy Brazier. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Laura. How are you?
Just wonderful. Anytime I get to see you virtually or in person is a great day.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. It's wonderful to be spending time with you this evening.
Well, and you're spending time with everybody because this is part of your 10th birthday celebration. And this is our chance to ask you some burning questions. We've gotten these from all over the world. So are you ready to go behind the scenes, Lucy?
I am indeed.
All right. I mean, here we are at 10 years of the Executive Secretary, now Executive Support magazine. But if we can just look way back to the start, Lucy, what did you want to do as a child? And was there anything that maybe indicated that you would be doing what you are doing now?
You know, Laura, I really think that we should be focusing our children on what they want to do rather than what they want to be. And for me, I always wanted to teach. My parents were theatrical, as you know, so getting up on stage seemed like second nature. And in fact, I sang in wine bars for a year. And then at school, I edited the school newspaper. I edited the school magazine without understanding that that could possibly be a career. And then, of course, I got into publishing as my job. And so it's kind of been all those things coming together. And travel was also a passion of mine. So without realizing it, I guess, I've ended up doing exactly what I wanted to do without understanding that there was something that I could be.
Pretty interesting to look back, you know, and see that all of these things that you did because they were a passion of yours, that you enjoyed it, could really string together, and your journey has led you to this point. Really, as you just said, kind of doing what you always wanted to do and enjoyed doing. Now, let's move into a quick fire round because I love starting off with good quick fire questions. Lucy, what's your favorite film?
Favorite film has got to be A Star is Born, the James Mason and Judy Garland version.
Fantastic. Favorite book?
Favorite book? Probably The Railway Children.
Oh, wow. I haven't read that. Now it's on my list. And for those of you that are watching that haven't read it, I guess I'll have the Lucy Book Club next up. Okay. Favorite piece of music?
The Elgar Cello Concerto, and it meant that I then took up the cello when I was about 13 until my brother cried the house down because I was so terrible at it. He said, please don't play anymore, but I still love the piece of music.
And I love that your parents supported you getting a cello at 13. Well, last off, what is the best way to spend your day off? And I know you don't have a lot, so what's the best way to spend your day off?
It depends whether I'm in London or whether I'm here in my new home in Spain. If I'm in London, it's being with my family and usually cooking them some kind of Sunday lunch with all of them around and chatting and, you know, maybe drinking some wine and just spending the day together. Here, I'm more likely to be found sitting on the beach with a really good book with my husband sitting next to me and, Yeah, that sounds like my idea of heaven right now.
Hey, and a big shout out to Duncan, your husband. What a great man, and seeing him at the Executive Secretary Lives and always with you, by your side, supporting you, and you him. It really is just always wonderful to hear you mention all of your family, the kids, your parents. They're really spectacular. I think a lot of us watching right now would love to be at that dinner on a Sunday afternoon. Lucy, what irks you most about this 2020 workplace for assistants? You know, as you can see, I want to dig a little deeper here. Like I said in your introduction, you've seen it from all corners of the world. You speak with assistants on a daily basis. What's irking you most about this 2020 workplace?
Oh gosh, I just think that nobody is recognizing them for what they do. I recently interviewed a lady called Karen Nussbaum, who was the original founder of the 9 to 5 movement back in the 1970s. And in fact, it's her story which they then based 9 to 5, the movie, on, because she was great friends with Jane Fonda. And back then they were campaigning for pay and for clear job descriptions and, you know, work conditions where everybody understood what the career progression was. And here we are 50 years later, and really not an awful lot has changed. And I have to say, it's 500 million women. It's a fifth of the world's working population. And I think that if it wasn't a female-based profession, then we wouldn't be having this issue. I can't see men putting up with it for 50 years.
You make an incredible point with that, Lucy. As we move now into 2021, do you see a bright future?
I really hope so. We've been doing a whole heap of work with the World Administrators Alliance to put for the very first time a global framework in place for career progression. And I think it is really going to be a game changer. It launches in May. And I think for the very first time, wherever you are in the world, you're going to be able to say to your executive, well, I'm a level 3 assistant or I'm a level 4 assistant, and everybody will understand the skill sets needed for that and what kind of tasks you should be asked to do. So it really provides uniformity in a profession where currently there are 162 job titles.
And that is exactly the support you offer through all of the myriad opportunities with executive support. Now, what is your why, Lucy? Your passion is tremendous. Your compassion is what makes you so incredible at what you do and how you do it. So what is your why?
I actually just really love these women. The very first time I ever met a group of assistants at training, I was quite arrogant, I think, when I went to go and meet them, because I sat and thought, well, I've been in business 24 years. What are they going to teach me? And actually came away 2 days later going, oh my gosh, they are so humble. They are servant leaders. They're so passionate about what it is that they do, but they're not seen. Nobody in business sees them for what it is that they provide to the business world. And to me, we just can't rest until we get to a point where they are valued in the way that they should be.
That is so very true. And Lucy, you never rest. You really don't. I mean, you've got this beautiful home in Spain, and on a day off, yeah, I know you're at the beach, but I also know that doesn't happen often. We got our next question coming in online, so I just want to take a peek here and see what we've got. All right. Lucy, why do you think you relate so closely to this profession, especially as you've never worked in administration? What do you think? What links you so close to this profession?
I think I probably always felt like a bit of an outsider. I think, I did work on reception right in the very beginning, but I think, I was always the very tall, quite goofy, very skinny, very long, quite lank hair. My teeth still aren't right, but I can remember as a kid feeling very, very much the outsider and never really feeling like I fitted in. And so I know them. I know who they are. And actually, I really connect at a very deep level with most of them. And I can't explain it, but I know that when I sit and have conversations with them, they see me and they understand that that's who I am and that I'm there to serve them because I want to make them the best that they can possibly be and help them to get the recognition that they deserve.
That really leads me to say to you that when I think of your name, what comes to my mind is servant leader. Because right now, as you just mentioned, you're there to serve them. And they see you as wanting to do just that. But the thing is with you, Lucy, is you see them. You see everyone you have a conversation with, everyone, whether it's just one-to-one or sitting next to somebody on an airplane or through a virtual call or in front of an audience of thousands. And for that, just thank you. Your approach truly is remarkable. And like I said, not just your passion, but your compassion has led you to such a moment of empowerment for all of us. So with that, what are your top 3 secrets to being an effective leader?
I think it's very much remembering that it is about them and not about me. I very often see leaders online who are talking about themselves and what they're doing. And actually, that's quite rare for me. I would much rather focus on them and what it's about as far as they are concerned. But also, I think with my team on a much more local level, it's very much about the fact that I work with them. They don't work for me. So very occasionally, if things are getting slightly awry, I might step in and become the boss. But most of the time, we're working very much together as a team, and I will roll my sleeves up and lead from the front and don't ask them to do anything that I wouldn't be prepared to do myself.
That really is superb. I think we all want to work with leaders like yourself, and you really give us a look into what leaders really are. So given that fact, and given the fact that you don't like to talk about yourself as much as you like hearing others talk about themselves and working out their goals, I would love to know 3 highlights of the last 10 years. And I know that there's many more than just 3. But if you could give us a few from the last 10 years, we'd love to hear them.
Oh, my word. I think we got nominated in 2013 for Business Magazine of the Year, and that was a huge highlight. We didn't win it, but we were up against 4 of the major publishing houses. And at that point, I was still sitting on my kitchen floor stuffing magazines into envelopes. And I had a chuckle to myself because, I thought, actually, you know what? It's amazing that administration is up there. A magazine for the administrator is up there on a business magazine platform alongside some of the really big names. So that was huge for me. I think being invited to launch the network for assistants at Buckingham Palace was quite a moment. I can remember standing. Yeah, it was mad. I was waiting to go in and the band was marching up and down and playing Les Miserables. And I thought, I'm sure that's about overthrowing the monarchy. But anyway, that's very bizarre. But also, speaking in 1 year, keynoting at 2 of the biggest conferences in the world for assistants. And, both of them were over 1,000 people. In fact, I think the second one was over 2,000 people, but waiting to go on. And actually, the first one of those, IAAP, I got out there and I did my thing, and it was such a blast, But I came off stage and I went and did a second talk about half an hour later, and people were kind of greeting me on the way there. But I think I relaxed so much that I just really enjoyed that second session, probably more than any that I've ever done. And halfway through, I told a joke and it landed, and over 1,000 people went up. And I've never had that before or since, but it was a wonderful, wonderful moment.
Those are incredible moments over 10 years. Can I ask you, since you brought it up, when you're backstage, you said that you loved it when the joke landed, that after you gave your keynote, you were so exhilarated, you spoke again. I truly believe we can all be great speakers as long as we believe in why we're saying what we're saying. So what goes through your mind right before you walk out onto that stage, Lucy?
I pray. I trained to be a preacher in the Methodist Church. And always before I went out onto the altar, I would stand behind stage and say, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable. And I breathe, because still 10 years on, I feel sick before I walk on stage. But I think it's about it mattering. And so it gives me energy. And that's what makes me a good speaker. So, I think for me, I really want somebody in the audience to have their life changed, or to take the words that I'm saying and to take them to their heart and use them to change their life. And actually, very often people do write to me and say, "You've totally changed my life." And that's just such an amazing blessing.
Well, I think part of that, just from my perspective, having seen you speak, is that it allows you to be present. I mean, I've tried to get more into meditation lately, Lucy, in like 2020 and now into 2021. And I find even that moment backstage or before the camera goes on live. I say the 23rd Psalm. It was my confirmation psalm. And it's just that moment, whether it's 15 seconds or 60 seconds of meditation, that really centers you and allows you to be present for those people you're about to speak with, not necessarily to, but with. And that comes through every time I've seen you on virtual programs or on big stages, Lucy. That makes a lot of sense and something we can all build on ourselves. Now, given all of this that has happened over 10 years, can you name a moment or something that you're most proud of?
I think what I'm most proud of is being involved with ASIPO, which is what we're fundraising for this evening. I was exceptionally blessed that Anel Martin and Terry Wells, when they were launching that foundation, came to me and asked me to be not just a director, but also a brand ambassador. And I have spent since 2016 actively raising money for them. We managed to get Zelda Lacongi, who was Mandela's assistant, on board as our patron. And we have put, goodness, it must be at least 16 girls and one boy now through that program, and trained them to be assistants for a year. And it is amazing. It's remarkable, actually, the ripples that causes, because you take them out of Soweto or the other townships, you train them for a year to become an assistant, and all of a sudden they are taken out of poverty. And especially when you educate the women, they teach the value of education later on to their children. But we're already seeing that some of the girls who've gone on to do amazing things are giving back. They give out of their salaries back into the foundation. And going to South Africa, going to Johannesburg once a year for ExecSec Live, we always invite the girls to the conference so that they can network with the speakers and so that they can hear the training. And honestly, they've become like family. And it's just such a joy in my life to have them as part of it.
Yeah, I can see why you chose that moment from these 10 years. I've seen you interact with the incredible students of ASIFO, and I'm very fortunate and grateful to have met many of them myself. And it really is not just training in the sense of training as perhaps we know it from the dictionary, but there's a sense of educational empowerment, emotional empowerment, spiritual empowerment, economic empowerment behind everything you do with ASIFO, that it's so very well-rounded. I absolutely can understand why you're really expanding on the executive support brand that we're relaunching today, because it affects everyone in so many different ways through all the great services you provide. So thank you for ASIFO and for not only creating something as such, but really getting behind it with everybody you know and love. It's how you seem to approach everything, Lucy. And I think some of that, I had the honor of meeting your parents a few times, and I think they have had a tremendous positive impact on you. They're both from theatrical backgrounds. Do you think that this has definitely, obviously helped your speaking career, having been in that house growing up and interacting with all these different actors and musicians and family friends as well as partners?
Well, it was definitely something I always wanted to do, and I have vivid memories of my mum reading parts for auditions and remembering them. Still to this day, I can remember huge passages of Shakespeare and Shirley Casey and all sorts of things that she was doing. But actually, I think it's my father more than anything else, probably, that has really helped. I remember very early on when I was speaking and I was making notes still and putting them in front of me, and getting so nervous. I can remember standing behind a lectern and physically feeling my knees knocking together and talking to him, and him saying to me, "You know, Lucy, you have a really good story to tell, so just tell it, and tell it with magic. Imagine you're telling a story to a 5-year-old. And actually, he encouraged me to think in pictures. He said, imagine it's a storybook and you're using the pictures to take you from one part of the story to the next. And so I've always done that. If I do use PowerPoint, which isn't all the time by any means these days, I just use the pictures to get me from one point to the next. And certainly, you know, as the ex-head of drama from the BBC and having been on the board of BAFTA, and, you know, to have his advice when he comes to see me speak is just, well, I couldn't ask for better, really.
Well, that's incredible advice that we can all follow. And I know that he and your mom are so incredibly proud of you and everything you've done and in the family you've created, not just in your home, but around the world. Now, we've talked a lot about some great achievements here and proud moments. But Lucy, you're so open with ups and downs and all around. Could you tell us a story of one of the biggest mistakes of your career?
Oh, my word. Well, actually, it was a mistake around the magazine that it very nearly shut us down right at the beginning. But we had only been going about 3 or 4 issues, and they delivered the magazine, and one of the pages had nothing on it, no print at all. And I looked at it and I said to Duncan, we're done. We're done, because they're refusing to reprint it. What are we going to do? And he fell about laughing and said, send it out. Send it out. And I said, I can't do that. You know, I mean, I'm absolute, you know what I'm like, Laura, and it's, I'm
attention to detail is attention to detail.
But Overachievers Anonymous, you know, I can't bear it if it's not perfect. But he said, you've got a choice. You either send it out or you shut up shop and you go home. And so I did send it out, and we had 2 people who wrote and said, my issue appears to have a blank page, and I sent them a PDF version of it so that they had the missing page, but we had nothing. So I think for me, it was a lesson in being brave. And thank goodness my husband is 20 years older than me and has been there and done it and seen it all, because actually if it had been down to me, I would probably at that point have caved in.
Well, you are brave. I love that word, and it completely suits you at the beginning of this journey, and you now 10 years into it, and what's an incredible journey still left ahead. And I love that, you know, a blank page. You know, write your own article, fill in the blank. So we've heard great stories about your family and CIFO. There's so many, I can only imagine, corners of inspiration that you think to in difficult moments and exciting moments and challenging moments. What inspires you?
Oh, gosh. The assistants inspire me every day.
Yeah.
Especially at the moment, in the middle of COVID, they are all really knuckling down and just getting on with it. And they don't complain and they don't stress. They just are absolutely the backbone of their companies. And so watching them is hugely inspirational. But also, it's you guys, the speakers. I mean, I'm very, very blessed indeed, A, to spend my life reading inspirational things as part of my job, and B, to spend time watching, whether in person or virtually like this, some of the greatest speakers in the world. And that is just the most extraordinary blessing, to be able to do that. And to meet you all. I very often feel that I have a ringside seat to history. You know, I about 5 years ago, I was invited by some of the speakers to go to see Bruno Mars in Paris. And we ended up in a house, about 10 of us, just sitting around drinking wine before the concert, and we stayed overnight and whatever. But I was surrounded by people like Libby Moore, who's Oprah's assistant, and Rosie Terenzio, JFK Jr.'s assistant, and that everybody who was there was kind of that level, and they were telling the most extraordinary stories. And I was just sat there thinking, pinch me, how did I ever manage to be sitting here? But it's truly wonderful to be able to have that honour of being able to be part of that group.
Well, you inspire all around you, whether speakers or trainers, all of us. And it's interesting because the way that you've created this incredible network of speakers and trainers and the incredible students and those that you advise on a daily basis, we've all connected to you in one way or the other. And it's usually through others. I remember when Sue France called me and told me about Lucy Brazier. You've got to meet. You've got to speak at that first ExecSec Live. She'd like to meet you. And that's how it began. And Lucy, you have such a solid reputation and such goodwill through all you do. It's pretty easy to be inspired, and it's pretty solid to just connect immediately with you. And Lucy, you've connected to people in over 50 countries. I mean, you've traveled over 50 countries. You've been everywhere in the world nearly. What's your favorite country and why?
Oh gosh, so many. But actually, sometimes it's the countries that I never expected to go to, and nor did I want to before this started, actually. Absolutely loved going to Moscow. We had a backstage tour of the Kremlin and got to go into some of the really ancient rooms there that not only do not many people get to go to, but you weren't allowed to take photos either. So that was an incredible honor. And going to Papua New Guinea. I mean, who goes to Papua New Guinea? It's bizarre. It's a bizarre place. I got onto the plane and the guy who was making the announcement said, "Please don't smoke and please don't chew betel nuts." And I was, betel nuts, okay, who knew? But they greeted me at the airport in their grass skirts. It's a whole other story, Papua New Guinea. But in fact,
it's a good one. I've heard it. It's excellent. If you ever get Lucy at the bar for a glass of wine, ask her about the Papua New Guinea story. Fascinating.
Yeah, I just, F. Lloyd, who is just the most wonderful leader, had said to me, if you go, you just mustn't go out of the hotel. It's too dangerous. And I didn't have a choice. They had laid on tours and goodness knows what. And, there's still cannibalism in parts of Papua New Guinea. But actually, I found the people to be extraordinary. And that's what it is about for me, mainly. It's the people. And so, everywhere I go, I meet sensational people, sensational leaders. And again, it's one of the great joys that I've got is joining up these amazing leaders all over the world so that they're working together. And that's where our one profession, one voice hashtag came from. Because there were pockets of brilliance all over the world, but they were all doing their thing in their pockets, as opposed to talking to each other and working together. My other favourite city in the world that I've been to was Rio, and that's because I got to go with Duncan and we spent a week there. But Pepita Sola, who is the leader out there and is the leader of the biggest association in South America, is again just an extraordinary woman with an amazing following. So it's beautiful souls that tend to attract me, as well as the places.
That is just lovely, Lucy. Where do you still want to go? Why? Where else do you want to visit?
I would very much like to go to India. It's a market that we haven't got into yet. China, I guess. But it's interesting because Isipo being so close to my heart, I seem to be being pulled towards countries where we might do that. When I was in Brazil, I had somebody who talked to me about the favelas and said it would be amazing if you could do something like you're doing in South Africa for us, because there's lots of things for the boys, but not for the girls. And I was thinking, how do we do that? And a week afterwards at my church, the guy who stood up to talk, who was the ex-minister, turned out to be living in the favelas and running a project there. And then I was invited to go to Delhi to go and look at a project in the slums there, where again, the phraseology keeps coming up. There's lots for the boys, but there's very little for the girls. So I kind of feel like this is the direction in the end I'll go, which is education for women in some of these countries where maybe they don't have the education at the moment. I very much hope I get the opportunity to do it.
That is marvelous, and I really have no doubt that you will. It seems that when you, Lucy, and all of us put something out to the universe and we visualize it and we focus on it, it happens, especially with support from something like Executive Secretary Support Magazine. You really put it all out there for everybody to be inspired by and soak in and use and adapt in their own lives. Now, over 10 years, You've learned a lot of important lessons. But what are the most important things that you've learned from your 10 years in business?
I think I always felt that you could be ethical in business, except for I was part of publishing, which is a rat race. So I really believe that you can be ethical and you can be kind. And I think over the last 10 years, I've really proven that that is the case. You don't need to be stepping up over other people and behaving badly in order to get to where you need to be. But I think it also comes back to that be brave thing. There have been times in the last 10 years where I really haven't known where the next penny's coming from. There have been times where we're coming up to deadline and I'm sitting there thinking, how are we going to do this? And what separates the people who manage to get there from the people that don't, I think, is just remaining calm, breathing, and rolling up your sleeves and doing the thing.
Well, you rolled up your sleeves for all of us for well over 10 years, Lucy. And when I think of words like brave and courageous and determined, it's all about what you are, who you are, and how you so unselfishly share that with all of us. You've done it for 10 years with Executive Secretary, now Executive Support, and I cannot wait for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 to infinity. How you've taught us and how you continue to teach every single day. Lucy, thanks for hanging out with me for a while and giving us that inside behind the scenes to this incredible 10th birthday of Executive Support.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you.
Cheers.